Welcome. On the bench here today is this Waltham pocket watch. This is a late 1800s pocket watch. I believe it's 1883. And it looks a little sad. I thought first of all when I picked this up it was the dial that was having this yellowing issue here. And also I thought these markings were on the dial as well, but in fact it's all in the crystal, which is loose. Let me see if I can just pop that out for us. Ah, there we go. Look at the difference. You know, for sure it needs a clean. We can see that. There's still a little bit of marking. But actually this dial is in quite nice shape. I'm just going to put that crystal back on. Look at the difference here. Just for some protection, we'll turn it over and have another look at the back. This was sold not working as well, so we don't know what the issue was. It wasn't really reported. Let's see if I can get my tools and we'll get that back opened. I'm expecting this to be a screw back. There we go. We'll take a look at the movement. Well, it looks pretty nice. I mean, the condition is decent, but I can see here the balance wheel is actually resting on the watch plate. There we are, look at that. So there's an explanation as to why this one's not working. The balance staff is broken. I'm also noticing here that we have a case screw that's missing. Everything else looks intact. 17 jewel watch. I think everything needs cleaning up. I can see some marks on the plates as well. But let's get into it, take a look. I think we can start by getting this chain off. Yeah. Let's get those hands removed. Oh, wait a minute. The watch just started up. So even without broken balance, she's ticking, which is interesting. So that's actually a good sign. It does mean the rest of the watch might be functional. We just need to get that balance taken care of. Okay, well, let's get these hands removed. I'll put this plastic sheet over the dial just to protect them. And we'll lift them away. See a little bit of corrosion. Not too bad. We'll take a look at those under the microscope a little bit later. Just speeding this section up. We'll take care of the second hand as well. And we'll just put them in this membrane box for safekeeping. Let's see if we can get this dial screw taken care of, the remaining one. This P.S. Bartlett name on the watch, he was a foreman of the screws and also the watch plates during the mid-late 1800s. And these were middle to upper grade watches. I can already see some features on this watch that would indicate that. This micrometer adjustment here for the regulation, for example, as well as the 17 jewels. And the turning on the watch as well, very fancy. I just need to remove this bezel, and that will give us access to get the movement out of the watch. It comes out of the front. And we'll take the protective ring off, and this will give us access to these dial screws on the side. I see we're still ticking away there, but as soon as I move the watch vertically, it stops. Definitely a broken balance staff. We'll remove the dial. So now we can work on the watch movement. We'll take out this balance complete first of all, being very careful of that hairspring. I want to take another look at this setting lever here. It had found its way inside the watch under the dial and should be just about here. And then it operates on this cam that moves those gears out of the way and then engages the time setting. And now when I turn this winding arbor, instead of winding on this ratchet wheel here, it's turning the hour wheel. Okay, that's good news. While we're on the side of the dial, I can get access here to the cannon pinion. It's friction fit, and we need to move it out of the way so we can start taking things apart on the other side. Oh, what happened there? And of course I thought I'd lost the cannon pinion. I spent 10 minutes looking for it. Always best to look in the obvious place. It got stuck in the cannon pinion remover. There we go. One of the things you learn really quickly with this hobby, these springs have a habit of flying into thin air. It's always best to secure them and very, very carefully remove anything attached to them. I don't know what happened to this setting lever, that it got inside the movement. It seems to have an awful lot of corrosion on it. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. This crown wheel device is also spring loaded. We'll just carefully remove this. I see that's part of the spring on the other side. We'll need to turn the movement over to check that out. We'll take these intermediate gears out. And there's another spring device just here on that wheel. Lots of things to ping off the watch here. Caution, take care. Now we can work on this. Our cock here is over the top of the barrel bridge, and again spring loaded. That's the ratchet wheel and the clicker, so that's what's making the click sound when we operate the wind. Again, lots of dirt under here. And I'm going to hold down the spring while we remove that clicker. We might have still a little bit of power on the mainspring because this is jammed in a little bit. Well, I took care of that. There was a little bit in there, not too much, and we're able to take the spring out. And the ratchet wheel should just come free. So this side is done pretty much. We'll need to release the winding arbor later on with these two screws. It certainly needs a good clean. Back on the other side now, we can work on Mr. Bartlett's bridge plates. This one looks to be one of those blued screws, but the other one here is a different screw, so perhaps this has been replaced at some point. Or maybe the blue screws are not original either. Although in researching these movements, just having a look at others that I've seen, it does look like those blue screws are used fairly commonly. This one's for the main barrel. This barrel holds the mainspring, and we'll take this apart and have a look at this later on. So now onto this main plate, and it's quite noticeable. This is holding all of the trainer wheels. Those jewels there will have to be set quite accurately in the pivots when we come to put this back on. That could be a challenge. I love the damascening finish on this main plate. They did some nice work in the 1800s. Again, this screw, it's not a blued screw, but that first one I took out was. I'm just wondering if these are mixed up a little bit. And removing the bridge plate shows our trainer wheels, and quite an interesting pallet fork there, more like a pallet arm, and held inside the bridge. So let's take the trainer wheels off. This is the escape. Third wheel. Fourth wheel. Taking a quick look at these pivots, but we will look under the microscope at those. And the center wheel. This is that spring mechanism that was working against the motion works. We couldn't get to from the other side. There's a small screw holding this spring in. Pretty tiny. Now to get this winding and setting arbor out, we'll need to turn the movement over. Just loosening these allows that arbor to drop. And we'll keep these screws together with that. And that's it. We'll leave the jewels in place. We'll take a look at them under the microscope and just check those. And if need be, we can press them out and clean them. And I might just have that played out as well there. It's got some markings on here, a patent date for what looks to be March 1884. Okay, time to get everything into the cleaner. Before we do that, I did want to inspect the base plate under some magnification, kind of a before and after. I've literally no idea what that is. It looks terrifying, like something out of a petri dish. We'll take a look at these jewels. Clearly very dirty, but I'm not seeing any damage. We'll need to give the base plate a good clean, and then I think we can inspect these a little bit more closely. This is the end cap jewel that will need to be removed and cleaned. I'll use this ultrasonic cleaner for the cleaning. We'll give these parts about 10 minutes in the cleaning solution. And then we'll rinse them for another 10 minutes and give them a blow dry. Even after cleaning, our evil friend is still here on the base plate, so I'm just going to use some pegwood here and run it along the grain and see if I can scrape this off a little bit. And we'll give it another cleaning cycle. For all of our smaller parts, we're just going to drop those into these baskets before going into the cleaner. Don't forget the screws. This is the pallet arm out of the cleaner, and the rubies look great. And so do these pivots. Nice little rounding at the end, and I don't see any damage to those. And look at these jewels, so much better. Although, do you notice something? There's a screw missing here, holding that jewel in place. Yes, they look very clean. I'll just adjust the focus a little bit. I'm not seeing any damage or pitting. Much better. And there's another screw that's missing. That's really strange. And our end cap. I will take this out and give this a clean separately. While we patiently wait for the cleaner to do its thing, one of the items I wasn't particularly happy with was this setting lever. It's picked up a lot of corrosion, and I thought I would just try and improve this a little bit, see if we can get this off. I'm starting with a 400 grit stick here and getting the worst of it off the top. I'll have to do the ends as well. And I'm just going to speed through this. I'm lifting up the numbers here to get a finer grit level. And I'm not looking for a perfect, shiny setting lever here. This is more of a functional device, and it's hidden by the bezel under normal operation. We'll just finish off with a little Flitz cleaning polish on here, and I'm going to use my pegwood just to get the remainder off. Not perfect, but much better than it was. I was about to change the cleaning fluid in the jars, and when I looked down into one of them I saw these two tiny dots. And do you remember our base plate and those jewels with the missing screws? Yes, it definitely pays to check the cleaning solution before you throw it away. These are so tiny and very easy to lose. Perhaps there's a hidden message in our $quarter here. Phew, thank goodness we found them. Let's take another look at these hands now that I haven't touched since they came off the movement. They looked okay, but we'll get them off this membrane plate and just take another look at them. They seem fairly straight and not in too bad condition. But let's take a closer look. We'll put them under the microscope and see what they look like. I really should learn my lesson here and not do this. Yes. Lots of dirt, missing the bluing, some rust. Well, okay, let's get them into the cleaner and see if we can improve that. This is the mainspring barrel. We'll just take the cap off, and that will give us access to the mainspring. Looks like an original blue steel spring. We'll remove the arbor, and then we'll take the spring out for inspection. Just wind this out from the center. And I noticed here we have quite a kink at the end. Regardless, it's a good idea to change these, and I will. So on to the rebuild. We'll work on this winding pinion first of all. Just going to add here a little Mobius 9501 grease. And this needs to be screwed in place from the other side of this base plate. We'll just pop it in here first and line those screw holes up. I've just got this resting on the the Bergin mat, so hopefully everything stays aligned here. We'll get that tightened up. And just check the functionality. It looks good. Now we'll put that tensioner spring back that was used to operate the keyless works. There's a little pin I've got to line up before we screw it down, and I'll add a little more of that Mobius 9501 since we have metal on metal here, and I can just see some markings where the spring has been operating over the years. Maybe a little bit too much. I'll use my Rodico just to take the excess away and clean up a little bit. Now we can start with the train of wheels. First the center wheel, then the fourth wheel. We'll come back to the third wheel, which is this one here. In fact, the gear goes down. And we're just sitting these in the dual settings. The last one is the escape wheel. For this top plate now, I wanted to be sure we put those two screws back, and these hold in these dual settings. They came out so nicely, they almost look like gold, and in fact I checked my records and the movements above this standard did have gold dual settings. Makes one wonder. Just tighten those up. And now the pallet arm. This was in the top plate when we took apart the watch, but I'm going to try and put it back this way. It seems though it's not engaging this escape wheel correctly. Something's not quite right. I know what it is. This escape wheel is the wrong way around. That gear should be down. Okay, we'll try that again. Just see it in the dual setting. The pivot goes in there. Yeah, that's much better on an alignment. So good, we can add a little dual grease here now. So it's time for the top plate. Easier said than done. All of these pivots have to align up onto those jewels in one plate. That's not easy. And in the end, I needed to take this off camera. And my technique that seemed to work well was just holding the base plate at an angle here, and then with my tweezers manipulating each of the gears until they dropped into the dual settings. Eventually the whole thing clicked into place. Now we'll just check the operation. I'm using my tweezers here to move the center wheel and make sure that power goes all the way through the train right to that pallet arm. Back to this dial now. You'll remember the yellow crystal we had. Well, even on removal of that, we still have some dirt on this dial that needs taken care of. I did put this under the microscope and noticed quite a lot of dirt. So we're going to put this in a warm jar of water here, and then drop in the secret weapon. And we'll just give that a few dunks in the solution. And since you're probably wondering It's just a denture tab. Anyone will do. Avoid the mint flavour, I suggest, unless you like your dials that way. And we're just rinsing this off in some clean water. And drying. I still see a few spots. That's definitely loosened the dirt, but there are just a few things that need taking care of. And I'm just using plain water again with some pegwood. And we'll get this old grime out of here as well. It's all nice and loose for us. And finally, after a few more rinses, she came out looking like this, ready to go back in the watch. The main suspect, and the reason the watch wasn't operating, was the balance staff. And I need to remove the hairspring and balance wheel here, just by undoing that screw and dropping the stud and spring out. And sure enough, as soon as I hold this up to the camera, we can see on the left here that pivot end of the staff is completely gone. It's broken away compared to the right, and it should be the same. So we'll need to remove this balance staff. We'll start by removing the hairspring, and I just need to position these claws under the collet and work that off the staff. And now the roller table. We have a very small jewel on this roller table called the impulse jewel that needs to be protected. The balance staff is riveted in place against the wheel here, and I'm going to use my staking set and find a suitable stake that is just the right size that will allow us to drive out the balance staff. This one should work. I just need to center up the staking tool and find a small support that will allow us to rest the balance wheel while we find a stake to drive it out. I was able to take some dimensions on the staff and confirm that we needed number 1365 from Waltham. There's two models, 1364 being the other. And I was fortunate to find this new old stock staff. New old stock. Well, there it is. And here's the problem with picking up these old items. They've been sitting in somebody's drawer for well over 100 years, and clearly we need to do some work on this staff and get it cleaned up. I'm using a pin vise here to hold the staff, and this is pithwood. It allows us to clean the end of the staff and polish it at the same time. The other end of the staff is a different diameter, so I'm going for a pin vise to pin vise handoff here, and we'll get this other side done. It did take me a few rounds at this before I was happy, and I went through the cleaning cycle a few times as well. But eventually we ended up with this water difference, ready to be reassembled in the balance. For that we need the staking set, and our first stake here is just to center up a right-sized hole so we can put our balance staff in. and then our balance wheel. I just want to make sure this seats down correctly on the staff, so this stake is bigger than the staff and flat, and will just rest on the balance wheel. And we'll tap this down gently. I'm just going to run it around a few times. I'm trying to make sure that the balance wheel is evenly seated on the staff. Now we need to rivet the balance staff, and there's a small lip. This stake just goes over the middle section that we can see on the staff, and it sits on that lip, and it's rounded, so I'm trying to splay out that lip. And my strikes are a bit firmer here just to splay this out. And this is the riveting part. Excuse the pun. I want to make sure that it's evenly riveted all the way around. And then now it's splayed out, I need to use this final stake, which is a flat stake, just to push down that rivet and seal it down onto the balance wheel. So again, some firm strikes, and try to make sure that that's even all the way around. That should do it. Now the rivet is set. I want to make sure that there's no movement or slippage between the balance wheel and the balance staff. So I'm just putting a little piece of Rodico on the end of the balance staff, and with a light grip I'm just turning this wheel to make sure that the staff is also turning as well. If it was slipping, then we would see the Rodico staying still as we turn it, and I think that that's pretty secure, so we'll move on. As part of the rebuild process, I want to remove these jewels, and we'll use this jeweler's tool just to push them out. You need to get the pin centered correctly, just like that. There are 2 jewels, and we'll clean them in this 1-dip solution. After the cleaning, under the scope, and we can see here a ballpoint pen, just to give you an idea of scale. They look great. One's got a hole in, which is where the pivot goes through, and the other is the cap jewel on top. And we need to put a small drop of oil, about 75%, filling into that cap, and then using capillary action we can just join the 2 together. I've got the jewels repositioned and pressed down. I just need to put back these 2 tiny screws. Continuing with the build, just adding a little grease here to go into the micrometer adjustment, and that's this wheel. And next to regulating arm, we'll turn this over because those 2 regulating pins just need to straddle the spring. Putting on the last screw and just checking that the micrometer is turning the regulator arm and moving those pins. the new mainspring came in, and we've got the right one here with a T end. Unfortunately, this one is already compressed inside a container here, so we don't need a mainspring winder. I just need to simply work it down into the mainspring barrel. Just clean this up a little bit. And that's ready to put the arbor in. There's a small catch in the arbor here, and I just need to make sure that that engages with the whole end of the mainspring. It's already pre-greased, so I don't need to add anything on the mainspring, but I'll put a little drop on this arbor. And I'm using a special tool here that, once I've put the cap on, will just allow us to compress this down evenly and close the barrel. Now back to the movement and the return of the mainspring barrel. I've just temporarily positioned it upside down here so I can add a small amount of oil around the arbor. Maybe a little bit too much there, so we'll just dab that away with Rodico. And I can turn it over and slide it into place. Little oil on the top of the arbor. And now we can put back Mr. Bartlett's bridge plate. And in honor of his position, I decided to use the blued screws for this plate. This is the barrel bridge. Back to the dial side, and we can put the click spring back in place. And a small clicker. Always nervous when a spring is not pinned down and can fly anywhere, so we'll get that secured with this screw as soon as we can. And now the ratchet wheel. And we have a small plate that just secures everything in place. As part of the setting mechanism, we had this small tension spring, and this just operates on a conical shaped gear. We'll put the minute wheel back, just add a little oil for it. Now we can put back that conical gear, but there should be a pin here, and I don't see anything. There's a hole through this plate and I should not be able to see through it. I've made a mistake. There should be a plate underneath here, and it was the last part I took off, and it should have been the first part I put back. It means I'll need to go backwards and undo everything. Well, let's just say some time later. And with the magic of video, we have our part back in place, and I can get back to the setting mechanism. It's one of those things, and it happens in this hobby. And now we can put back that conical gear. And I did undo this spring here. It's easier to do it this way, and then pin the spring down and put the screw in afterwards. So we can put back that setting lever now. This is what we cleaned up earlier. And this is held back by a small spring. And we'll just check the operation, make sure it works against that cam okay. Now we're at the point where we can check to see if that ratchet wheel will wind the mainspring and hold the wind. This is good. That seems to be working well. We're getting close. We just need to add a little oil. This is Mobius 9010. And I'm just putting a tiny drop onto each of the pivots. And that's for the train of wheels. We'll do the other side as well. You can see the small spindle coming through right on this one. Here is the second hand. I'm going to use a slightly thicker oil for the center wheel. And now the moment of truth. We have wind, our balance is rebuilt. How long has it been? 10, 100 years? Wow. And there it is. She's working. That's always so great to see. We'll just put back the balance cock screw here. It's such a pleasure to finish these watches and see them fire up this way. Now to finish up the dial side. For some reason I don't recall seeing a dial washer on this particular watch, but we'll just put it back the way we found it. I need to hold this dial in place by tightening up these screws. There's 3 of them. Now we can replace the hands. These came out quite nice after cleaning. And once the hands are in, I'm just going to put this into setting mode to make sure that there's no conflict between any of the hands, and that looks good. This old crystal is acrylic and all scratched up and obviously yellowed. We're replacing that with a new glass one. Now I've found the right size. We'll use a little bit of pegwood here just to clean everything out. And I'm using this cement to put the new crystal in place. And an old oiler here. I've got about 10 minutes working time on this and we'll get the crystal in. Here's the new one. I much prefer glass. And you can let that cure with an ultraviolet or put it outside for a while. On to recasing the movement. I did find a couple of dial screws, and we can get those in place and secure the watch properly. Now for our front bezel and that new crystal, which is looking fantastic. I've demagnetized the movement and made a few adjustments, and the performance is looking exceptional. I was hoping for something like plus or minus a minute a day, and it's more like within 5 seconds. Good amplitude above 200, below 280, and a beat error below 1 millisecond. I'm really happy with that performance. We're coming to the end of our journey on this lovely old Waltham model 1883 P.S. Bartlett. I'm sure Mr. Bartlett would be very happy to see this watch operating again after so many years. Thank you for joining me, and until next time.